Bobby Johnson, well done, Manchester United.
Beckham, into Sheringham, and Solskjaer has done it! And it's half saved it! United again! Rooney! A magnificent goal by Robin van Persie!
Welcome to United Hour, your official Red Cafe podcast for all things Manchester United. I'm your host, Nick.
And I'm Colm.
Yeah, we're recording literally minutes after kind of crazy 5-2 win against Bournemouth. Pretty good week for us after we also beat Brighton 3-0. I mean, yeah, these are actually two teams that have been like kind of semi-bogey teams for us in the past year or two. I mean, we've had a couple of losses against each of them. So to come through both of these matches pretty easily, yeah, everything's feeling pretty good, full of confidence, the team. I mean, yeah, you'll surely be ready to burn in that Ollie Out t-shirt soon, right? I saw you last time you said you were just keeping it in the cupboard just in case, but yeah, it's just got to go in the bin sooner or later.
Probably go up into the attic, until maybe next season. Maybe, I don't see us needing it for a little while anyway.
But yeah, no, look, it's great. I mean, this is the kind of best I've felt about our team since Fergie leaving, really.
Definitely.
It's also it's the first time we have a kind of settled team, isn't it? There'd been these ridiculous rumours pre-match of there being a bust up or training ground accident between Bruno and Pogba, and loads of people started saying, "Oh, we're going to be absolutely screwed without either of these two." But it was all just tabloid rubbish, basically. I think based on some fake news posted somewhere, and that's the way nowadays. But yeah, we had an unchanged lineup for the third match in a row, and it's the first time in a long time that you feel that we've actually got a first 11. There's still a couple of question marks in a couple of areas, but that right wing spot that we've always said was wide open, Greenwood is really stepping up and very difficult to leave out now. At the start of the season, we talked about number 10, and of course, Bruno's coming in there. I know you've talked on the last podcast, and even we have, about the centre-backs and the defence, and yeah, we'll get onto that in a bit more detail, because yeah, that was the only kind of negative point of the day today. Yeah, a couple of the goals we gave away, and it could have even been worse than that, actually. 2 goals down. Especially disappointing for me as somebody who's drafted in Aaron Wan-Bissaka into my fantasy team, not to get that clean sheet against Bournemouth, who haven't been able to buy a goal recently. But yeah, look, why don't you give us your quick takeaways from the match today?
Well, it was just a very fun game to watch, first of all. It was crazy. I think the overriding thing that I felt afterwards, after kind of really enjoying the game, and I think the second half was just a very relaxed thing after like the first 10 minutes, basically after the 2 goals, Mason and Bruno. But the big takeaway I have is that at 1-1 or 1-0, last year, that's such a tricky fixture for us. And it was a pattern of play that we would have seen so much last year, where we have a lot of the ball, but we're so exposed on the counter. And we still were exposed on the counter, so it still shows that there are frailties there within the squad, particularly at the back. But our composure, our control, and our faith in our ability to create chances now with Bruno, Pogba, and the front three all firing is just a complete game changer. So to get those 2 goals back, or 3 goals at halftime, to get back to that commanding position within the half. Normally last year we would have been doing well to get 1 back at any stage, and more likely it would have teetered on to the 60th, 70th minute with a complete lack of creation or invention, even earlier in the season, rather than last year. But now it just feels totally different, that even going 1-0 down, as disappointing as it was, you just didn't feel like it was going to be that big an issue, and if anything, you thought it would just kind of spur us into life even more. And that's such a transformation, for this United squad.
I totally agree with that, and it's exactly how you say. There was these kind of times where we'd go 1-0 down, and you'd almost be happy to say, "Oh, if we can get a draw now, I'll be happy." Whereas we don't have that feeling anymore. And we're obviously dominating from the kickoff here, and you just thought it's a matter of time. But yeah, Bournemouth hadn't read the script and managed to nick a goal from somewhere. But like I said, yeah, let's talk about that a bit more in a minute, about whose fault it is and kind of defensive issues that might still be the only negatives that are out there. But yeah, look, we totally dominated. It was kind of seemed like how many goals we're going to get. I know everybody's been piling in Man United players into their fantasy team, and I talk about fantasy just because, I'm way too into it. But it is kind of just a sign of where we're at. That now every manager in fantasy football wants to load up on Manchester United attackers, and it's not been like that for a long, long time. I mean, it used to be like that back in Fergie days. It just used to be a question of kind of which 3 United players was I going to have in my team. But lately I'd been going periods saying, oh, am I even going to have anybody? Maybe you might have Rashford in there.
Yeah.
Now, you're like spoilt for choice. Bruno, Rashford, Martial, Greenwood, Wan-Bissaka. And it looks like a real good sign of where we're at. But it's the confidence of the team, like you say, even going 1-0 down, you weren't that worried. They straight away got back on it, straight away back pressure. And I can't even how many minutes it was until, we got the equaliser. But it wasn't long at all. And same again in the second half when somehow we just start awfully, give them a goal, but still just come back again.
Yeah.
But that is the big difference now. You feel confident. There's a clear, settled team there that are all know their positions, all know what they're doing. And we see now what Ole's style always was. This was always a discussion. What is his style? And it wasn't always clear, but I think now it starts becoming clear that he had certain players that he really needed to make that style work that were missing. And of course, when you bring in Pogba and Bruno rather than Lingard or Pereira, then the kind of gulf in class is just pretty easy to see there.
And I still don't think he's, I don't think he's 100% with it. I don't think he has that team exactly where he wants it by any stretch of the imagination. So to see such a consistency both in team selections, but also in the product, and as you say, the kind of style on the pitch is really pleasing, because I still think he would think he's 2 or 3 players at least, and a bit more depth away from the final iteration that he would view that as. So that's obviously very encouraging. And I mean, that was, you say there about the not having named unchanged lineups in such a long time. That was the first time we'd named the same starting 11 for 3 matches in a row since 2005, I think.
I did see that stat, and then I don't know if you actually saw that it was actually Red Cafe Twitter. I don't know if it's Damien who's on it.
Has it
who
been
was
debunked?
questioning. He was questioning whether that was correct, and he'd actually thrown out another 3-game run
in the Premier League.
In the Premier League that was more recent than that.
Wow.
That stat is up for question, and I didn't have time to check it myself. But we know it has been a while since we've had a kind of settled team, since you feel like you've actually got a first 11. I mean, for me, the only kind of question mark still out there was kind of Lindelof, to be honest. But when Bailly came in, he did everything he could to cement the fact that maybe Lindelof is first choice still.
I thought that was really interesting because, I mean, I haven't, obviously we came straight off to do this podcast, so I haven't seen any post-match interviews or anything like that. It was interesting to me. Do we know, was Lindelof injured, or was it just a tactical substitution?
Was there an injury to Lindelof? What was the change at half-time?
He struggled today with his back, Victor, so hopefully he won't be too bad.
That first goal, like as I said, we're absolutely dominating. You just think, when are we going to score and how many are we going to score? Bournemouth are not even in this game. And all of a sudden, from like a pretty, innocuous position, we end up conceding a goal. And you just say, starts off with Lindelof having a pretty poor go at clearing the ball with a header. Then Maguire gets ripped, and then De Gea can do better. And it's literally, we had this kind of goal against Tottenham about 2 weeks ago, didn't we? Not in the same way, but the same kind of
same sort of chain,
Yeah, it was at that time. It was a poor Shaw header. Yeah. Again, Maguire got ripped, and then again question marks over De Gea. But who do you give most of fault to for this goal there?
Personally, this is similar to how we kind of deconstructed that Spurs one, is that I think the first person is the most culpable, but then you have to analyse them each individually, if you know what I mean. So I think Lindelof primarily, that chance should never come to pass because he is odds on to win that header. And the issue that he has is, which is a consistent issue with Lindelof, is that he just wants the ball to come to his head. He doesn't want to attack it. He doesn't want to move into it. He doesn't want to assume control. He's extremely passive. So he's just on a 6-yard line thinking, happy days, that ball's coming right for my head. But you have to know that, he doesn't have eyes in the back of head, nor should he, but you have to be aware that someone is going to come in and challenge you for that. And a Bournemouth player does come in and challenge him. And it means he doesn't get the connection that he thought he was going to get. He doesn't get the clearance that he should have got from that header. And it was just that, it all came from that. I thought then actually Wan-Bissaka did quite poorly as well, which I don't think was kind of picked up on the commentary, in that it came out kind of wide left then, and he kind of got sold a dummy and went down to block the kind of cross-come shot that came in. But after that, he just stayed on his knees. He didn't get back up, and it was clear that the ball hadn't been cleared. And he just kind of I almost felt it was very lax. I think we lulled ourselves into thinking that we were just so dominant. We're in such good form. We'd started the game so positively and we're all over Bournemouth that we just didn't basically have to defend, and that was kind of typified by Wan-Bissaka for me, by just kind of just staying lying down, even though the ball was very much still active inside the box, basically at the byline. Of course, Harry Maguire gets done an absolute nutmeg, clumsy kind of stepping across. I actually think he's kind of least to blame because it's a good bit of skill. When you move, you have to open your legs. Put it that way. I would blame him the least out of it.
I don't know. I'm like, yeah, as a centre back, I actually find again like that I'm putting most of my blame on Maguire, to be honest. Like I say, I hadn't actually noticed Wan-Bissaka, and I need to go and watch that again to see what you said over there. I did see he ended up in the ground, but I just thought he was kind of unlucky to slip over.
He did. He didn't slip. He slid to block a shot that never came anywhere near him in the end. A sort of cross-come shot. I think he was trying to cover the near post, and it actually came more in towards the penalty spot. But then he just stayed lying down, and then he got up on his knees and kind of just watched play from his knees when he had all the time. And like it wasn't a split second thing where he couldn't have impacted the play. Him being on his knees is why Maguire had to come across to the man on the byline.
Yeah, all right, fair enough. I need to go and rewatch that. But yeah, still for me, it's unforgivable from Maguire to get done like that, and done like relatively easily, I'd say. If he hadn't also had this against Spurs just a couple of weeks ago, you might have said, oh, it's a one-off. But when that kind of similar thing happens a couple of weeks in a row, then you start having big question marks. Generally, he had a slightly shaky period, I think, somewhere around Christmas time, but otherwise, generally, he's been really solid. But that is kind of 2 goals now where big question marks get put on Maguire now. And what do you think on the goalie? I mean, you always say you shouldn't get beaten on the front post, but at the same time, when a striker is in that position, you're also worried about him just curling it in at the back post.
I wouldn't be, because he's literally like he must be like a foot off the byline. So for him to whip that ball, he doesn't have the angle to play the far post. In my opinion, he would need to take another touch out, to kind of create that angle for himself. Because otherwise, you're trying to whip it the whole way back from line to line, if you know what I mean. So I didn't really think the far post was as big an issue. What I do think was the issue was they had 3 men lined up around the 6-yard box for tap-ins. So I think De Gea thought that's where it was going.
Yeah.
I think he thought it was going to be a cutback, and he was trying to hedge his bets with that. But it's just poor. It's not. I don't think it's a good finish. It's a good finish in that he scores the goal. Don't get me wrong, but I think that should be saved every day of the week, and I think most keepers would save it. I think it's another blooper from David, and I think also he was awful in his distribution throughout the game.
Oh yeah, definitely. There was 2 or 3 times where it was just totally unforgivable balls coming from him, and yeah, it is becoming more and more of an issue. I know that when a couple of weeks ago he had that issue that Ole came out and defended him, said he's still the best goalie in the world. But yeah, he has to say that.
Of course he does.
At the moment,
I mean, he has to say that at the very least to the end of the season, and I think he'd actually back him further than that, in my opinion, because I still just think the contract, the money, the kind of issue with Henderson, it's a big step for him and all that kind of stuff, just means that I think he'll get another year. But I mean, and I appreciate I may have lost some objectivity on this, but I'm just done with him. It's something switched in my mind, and I appreciate that's not, but we all have biases, I think, in different places, if you know what I mean. We all have sort of just feelings about players and things like that. And to me, he doesn't inspire me with any confidence. He grates me in terms of his distribution, in his lack of authority. There was one late where the ball just kind of bounced in front of him, but I had to end up putting it out for a corner because he wouldn't just come and take it. Just everything about him now is just bothering me, and I've just got to that point where I would love to see us move on next year, but I don't think we will. So I'm probably just going to keep whinging about it and hating on De Gea, but that's just where I am at with it.
It will be interesting to see what happens. I mean, yeah, we went quite in depth on this a couple of episodes ago, and I said that I personally think we've probably seen the best of De Gea, and because he just started so young that he has already peaked and is maybe on a downhill. I mean, it doesn't mean that he's just awful all of a sudden, but yeah, I do think that his best days are behind him. And with Henderson, really knocking and putting in some damn good performances, will be. Let's see what call Ole makes on that over the break.
But today I was watching it, with this new rule of centre backs being allowed inside the box, and we are committed to that in terms of our build from the back, which is really good. I mean, we beat the press lots today, and we've been doing it since, well, we've been doing it all year, but primarily also very well since Project Restart. De Gea is just a nightmare with his short pass. There's once or twice he played us into big diffs that way, and I just think he's such a confidence goalie. I think he particularly at the start of his career, and I think it's been present there throughout his career, that when he gets into this rich vein of form of stopping all these shots, he plays extremely well. I think asking him to play out from the back and constantly putting him under pressure with his feet detracts from his confidence in a general sense, in that I think then he's more likely to make mistakes, even when it comes to goalkeeping, never mind playing the ball out. And I just don't think he's comfortable there with that, And I just don't think it's going to be good for us long term.
Yeah, I mean, it is something I wanted to pick up on, actually. This thing where, I still always find it really bizarre to see when you have the goal kick, two defenders in the box looking for kind of a short pass. And, obviously in days gone by, you never saw anything like this. It was just all goalkeepers smashing it as far down the pitch as they could. And that was just the standard. Then you kind of got, Pep tiki-taka, where he wants goalie to start being more of a ball player, and it starts becoming important. And it's even now taken, like you say, to the next level, where there's this rule change where defenders can receive the ball even in the box. I mean, again, as a centre back and like an old school centre back,
You wouldn't want any part of that.
I just every time I just feel like this is asking for trouble, yeah. But that's because, I've been drilled and maybe come from like a different time where it's like safety first, get rid of the ball. Your defensive job is just to like stop the other team from scoring, and you don't need to get too involved in anything else. But as you say, yeah, it is actually a really great tactic where we invite on the other team,
Exactly.
even when it's players who normally would come and park the bus at us.
Yeah, because they can't.
We invite them on, and then if we can play through the midfield, we're all of a sudden on the counter, and it works well for us every time.
It's releasing that higher midfielder, whether it be Bruno, whether it's Pogba, whether it's someone else, but you just get beyond that first bank. And we see so much now in modern football of us against two banks of four, and it's just constant. And that's a really nice way to kind of get past that. And you may only get it once every 10 minutes in a game or even less, but it's that one opportunity where you can actually get in behind the midfield, release one of your midfielders, and kind of have a run that you just don't always get, because like football's just not the way it was 10 years ago, not the way it was 20 years ago. It's so much more regimented, so much more structural, the whole way through the league. With Norwich probably be the only team who don't kind of twig onto that at all this year, and it can get a bit sanitized somewhere. Sometimes we just see the same kind of crab stuff going back and sets, and that is one way to kind of counteract that. So I think it's class, but I just don't think De Gea will ever really be that comfortable with it. But then there's probably a few in that back line who you could level the same criticism against, as we saw today.
Yeah, I don't want to get too down about a performance that was actually like attacking wise outstanding. 5 goals, could have even been like 6 or 7. But yeah, the defense is the bit where there has been question marks. But I don't know if you saw this stat as well that even surprised me this week, that we've actually got the most clean sheets of any English team this season, and second only to PSG in the whole of Europe, in the top 5 leagues, basically, for number of clean sheets, not just in the league, that goes into Cups and Europa League and whatever.
Yeah.
So then you say, look, are we really being too negative about our defence? And I'd kind of had this written down to talk about pre-match, and I was hoping we were going to keep a clean sheet, and I'd start talking about how our defence has been too maligned. But then, yeah, we see today exactly what the problems are in our defence. But yeah, as I say, at the same time, you can't really argue with the fact that we've had crazy amount of clean sheets. Our goals against column is looking really quite good this season.
Yeah.
And, it's really more like the attacking play that has come on more recently, whereas earlier in the season, we were more relying on the kind of defensive side to be solid.
I think there is an explanation there, in the sense that I think from a tactics point of view and structurally, we're extremely good defensively. I think we do have that sitting midfielder for long periods of the season. We've played with 2 of them, even when in a lot of games when it perhaps wasn't necessary.
Yeah, that is a big difference. It's right. Until Bruno came, we were always like having 2 of kind of Matic, Fred, or McTominay, whereas now...
And I wonder now with Bruno and Pogba, will we see that kind of eke away a little bit? Hard to tell, and particularly with the way this season's going to end with such a fast... number of fixtures coming together. I think it's hard to kind of maybe analyse that too much, but I think that's a big part of it. I also think we now control the ball so much better, so by virtue of having it for 60 of the 90 minutes or whatever else, 60-70% possession, you obviously don't have to engage in as many defensive situations, I think we've also sharpened up massively on our set piece vulnerabilities. Big credit, I think, again to Maguire and some of the forwards, and Pogba is extremely good in that role as well. He's very useful defending his own box. And then I think the last thing is that when we do concede, it nearly always seems to be a calamitous error, or there's always a very identifiable mistake. It's very rare you just say, "Oh, good goal." Very little we could have done about that. It always seems that any goal we concede has someone just letting their brain go for a wander, or just doing something ridiculous. Whether it's a De Gea mistake, whether it's Maguire getting done for pace, whether it's Lindelof being frail, or whatever it is. There's always something we can point to and say, someone else would have done better, we should have done better. And that maybe makes you think the defence are worse than they are, because that kind of lives longer in the memory. So that might be the only game you concede, or the only goal you concede in 4 games, but you'll kind of remember it and think that player isn't reliable. Because, there's been chat in the WhatsApp group there that, maybe you could account maybe 10 goals now directly to Maguire mistakes, and therefore how could you say he's had a good season? I think he's had a fantastic season. I think he's looked extremely good. I thought he was very good today, apart from that one mistake. But there's always that one mistake. I think they'll stop coming. And I also think 1 or 2 additions to that back line just takes it to a very, very, very strong place. But broadly, I think the stats are correct that we are very good defensively. I think it's more tactical than it is personnel, but I do think the personnel are probably maybe slightly harshly judged because the mistakes seem to be so glaring, if you understand, even though they're relatively infrequent.
Yeah, well, look, before we talk about Lindelof, Bailly, which is kind of a question, let's talk about the positive stuff, because I said maybe we've been a bit too focusing on the negative side on what was actually, a great win for us. So, they've scored after like 15 minutes, and it did take another 15 minutes for us to break through.
Now here's Rashford, back to Fernandes, Greenwood! Oh, breathtaking! What a talent! Fantastic hit! Ramsdale couldn't keep it out, and Mason Greenwood's remarkable story continues. 1-1.
And yeah, this time he's actually scoring from the left side. That's the thing from him. He's seems equally comfortable, left foot, right foot, and he's got a goal with each today. Both of them outstanding strikes.
Yeah.
And then after that, it just felt like, okay, we're back on track now. And you don't really feel that worry that we've had in games gone by, where you're not sure if we can hold on to things or if we're going to have a brain fart. But yeah, Greenwood comes in there. Then I was surprised to see Rashford step up for the penalty. I'd kind of assumed now, earlier in the season, and it was actually one of the reasons we got messed up, was when he started switching who's taking penalties, and we had games where Rashford missed, then Pogba missed, and I think even Martial missed a penalty, and we were all saying, look, surely we've got to just pick one guy. And I thought that Bruno was now number 1 penalty taker, but yeah, today Rashford has stepped up and scored a goal from there. I mean, what do you think about that?
Well, I mean, to come back to the most important thing, I was really annoyed because Bruno's my fantasy football captain. So I was fully expecting.
And on the other side, the guy who's number 2 to me in my little league, he's got Bruno, and I've got Rashford and Martial. So I was actually ecstatic that Rashford steps up and takes that one, and he's sending me a message going, "What? Why the hell is Rashford taking this penalty?"
Exactly. I mean, I was a little bit shocked, and I was a little bit nervous about it when I saw it, because, as you say, they've had Rashford, obviously PSG penalties, put away some big penalties for us, and I would generally trust him from the spot completely. Bruno, I think, is just that little bit, I don't know why, it's just because we think he's so class in every way, shape or form. I don't actually know that he's actually better at penalties, but you just seem to be more comfortable. And I did think that was him now, that was a nailed on thing. But, Ole spoke before about how there's kind of a group that are designated, and they'll make the decision themselves on the pitch at the time, which, raised eyebrows, and I still am not convinced that it's a super great way forward for penalties. But fantastic penalty. I mean, the keeper goes the right way. He kind of did as much stuttering as you can possibly get away with these days. But still, that's an easy way to mug yourself off if the keeper doesn't go early, because you then don't have the run up to actually get the power or maybe the accuracy into your finish. But he still tucked it really neatly into the corner. Fantastic. I mean, Marcus is, got big balls on him when it comes to penalties and stuff like that, so I would never be too concerned. And it was good because obviously he wants that goal. There's been a bit of talk that everyone else is in.
I think that was one thing. He hasn't scored since the kind of restart, so maybe that was a reason where he said, listen, get your name on the score sheet.
And I'd say everyone else would have been conscious of that. Bruno would have been conscious of that fact. I mean, he doesn't need any more stat pad, and he's making the Premier League look like just as easy as the Portuguese league, so it's not as if he needs the numbers. And I think they were conscious of that would be a good a good thing for Rashford after coming back from injury and playing very well, post lockdown, but just not getting those goals that he probably should have. And actually, after that penalty, he had the offside one. That was a brilliant goal from a Wan-Bissaka cross, but he didn't really threaten. With so many threats on the pitch now, he does seem to be taking a more creative role as opposed to a kind of a goal scoring, I need to get the goal kind of role, which is interesting. I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing. I think you have to look at the whole front four as an attacking unit. As long as we're pumping in 3 or 5 every week, then it doesn't really matter who's getting them.
Well, I think that is the great thing about this team now. Like earlier in this season, there was like a couple of months where Rashford was bailing us out from game. Like it was all about him, and he was the only one who was doing it for us. And maybe a year ago before, we had like Pogba as well. It was all about Pogba. If Pogba wasn't delivering, then the team wasn't going to deliver. But now we have like so many different options that if one player is not hitting 100% that day, there's somebody else who can step up. And that is what is the big difference. There's so many different threats in this team. That you don't need to worry about one player being the one, and that's what's and the other thing that I noticed today is that I always thought from the start of this season we were going to see a really like fluid, interchangeable kind of attacking unit, and we haven't actually that much. Like Martial had been kind of quite rigid number 9 stuck in the box in most matches, and Rashford always on the left, and then whether it was James or it was Greenwood on the right. But now in the last couple of matches you do start seeing this where they're quite happy to shift around a little bit, because Greenwood started on the right but he scored his goal from the left, and then my favourite goal of the day comes from Tony Marshall, where he's way out the box on the left-hand side. And this is a position where, we've seen him score goals from this position in times gone past, but more recently, he's been constantly stuck number 9 and was never even getting chances to score this kind of goal. Whereas today, people are moving out. He's coming a bit deeper, then Mason foots forward, or if Rashford's going in, and that, and Bruno sometimes ends up as well being the most far forward person over there. So this is what I really love now, that they're interchanging, and that for like the opposition is an absolute nightmare to deal with.
Completely. And I mean, just to kind of touch on a few things there, because I think it's just important to get out there, but Martial's number 9 play today I thought was fantastic. His goal is obviously sublime. On Ries, the little look up to see the top corner and then just think, yep, that's where it's going, no bother. Right on the brink of half time, just a stunning strike.
Then wide again, Martial onto his right foot, tries the curler. Oh, what a goal! So special. What a goal. 3-1.
But I thought broadly, he looks stronger, he looks comfortable, he looks like he's had enough minutes at number 9 to really understand where he should be. He does drop in, but not as much as he used to, and then he drifts out, and Marcus can kind of interchange, and Greenwood can as well. As you say, Bruno's very penetrative with his runs and his energy, and all that just really helps Martial. And I think it's just that thing that we always would have wondered is, previously we would have stuck a lot of the blame on him for not being involved, and I just think now we just have a team that can involve him, essentially, that can just make sure we are maintaining possession in the final third, that we are keeping teams camped in, that we are actually making those incisions that you need to get him involved. And I mean, his touch is so sharp. I thought the way he used his body to roll the centre backs and cause them issue, a lot of free kicks won in good places, and on the breakaway, even when we're playing out, everything sticks on him. So he's just looking more and more like a genuine complete number 9 that maybe a lot of us didn't, and myself included. I always hoped and we always wanted, but there was, and not to say that he's nailed on now, but there was always more question marks that I feel are just being quite well answered. I mean, he's the informed striker in the Premier League in 2020, and like long may continue, but he just looks much more comfortable in that number 9 role now, and I think that's big credit to Ole.
Yeah, no, and I agree. Like, I was not sure at all whether Martial could be converted to a proper number 9, and it's still not clear. But yeah, I remember we had this conversation, I think before the lockdown. We said, listen, none of us are that impressed by his play, but his stats are really good. But now he's actually even playing better, like you say, holding ball up, bringing others in, doing those kind of things that you weren't really sure if you could manage to do. Because, I've never had any question marks about his finishing. I know that kind of one-on-one, I'd always be more confident in Martial than maybe Rashford in finishing a goal. But yeah, as well, those kind of the hat-trick he got in that game where they were all that kind of striker in the box goals that you expect an Igalo or somebody to come up with. But normally he wasn't really in the right places for those kind of goals. But yeah, there has to be credit to Ole for this. We talked in the season about, look, we're not seeing where's the coaching, which players are getting improved. But yeah, here is where you see the big difference. And another stat that was thrown out, I don't know if you've seen this one, because I'm going to throw a big quick pop quiz at you, but you might have seen it already. First time since the 2010-11 season that we have two players who've scored 20 goals in the season, in Rashford and Martial, who both hit their 20th goals of the season today. Do you know who are the two players who scored 20 for us back in 2010-11?
2010, 2011?
Yeah.
Rooney?
No.
No?
Yeah, I mean, we did have the Premier League top scorer that year, if that gives you a clue.
No, my head's gone to mush, mate. Who is it?
Yeah, fair enough. It is difficult always to pull these out. But yeah, it was Berbatov was Golden Boot that year, joint with Tevez. That was the year I think he scored like 5 against Blackburn. And people always questioned whether he was worthy, even though he did win the Golden Boot that year. And then the other one who scored 20 that year was Chicharito.
Oh, right. I was thinking Nani.
No, yeah, Chicharito and Berbatov. So that's the last time we've had two players hit 20 goals in a season. And, that was a league-winning and Champions League final year for us. But, it's been a long time since we've had two on form. And then, just behind them is Mason Greenwood as well, who's already, I think, 15 or 16. I think that was his 16th goal.
Yeah, I think the second was the 16th.
Most of those are from the bench. And I think that stat had been thrown out already, was that our 3Ms, Mason, Martial and Marcus, have scored more goals than Salah, Mane and Firmino this year. So yeah, I think that was even pre-lockdown.
I think they're like the sixth highest scoring trio in all of Europe. It's just genuinely fantastic. And the other scary part of that is, Martial is the player under 25 with the most goals in the Premier League. A lot of the other strikers that we would compare them to are really in their prime, if not exiting it, but there's still so much growth in those three players, like a frightening amount. So to kind of have that this early is really encouraging.
And the big thing that Greenwood's done, not just how outstanding his finishing in and play, he's actually doing more kind of defensive play than I ever expected from him. I think it'd been talked about that maybe he's focused on his physicality and he has bulked out a little bit during this kind of lockdown break. That was one reason I always thought that in some big games, Ole would prefer Dan James, just because he did so much of that running for the team, even though maybe he wasn't offering as much as he should do attacking wise. It was more maybe for his defensive side of the game. But yeah, Mason is contributing there. There was a couple of times I've seen him back there helping out Wan-Bissaka, protecting. And yeah, to see him come score one goal from the left, one goal from the right is just brilliant. And that right wing had really been one of our big question marks. Remember, even in our pre-season pods, we were saying, Leeson, these are the places that are up for grabs. Right wing, number 10, and who's the kind of second centre back, the kind of and then there was still kind of midfield question mark around that time of year as well. But yeah, he's really now locked in starter like game after game. Yeah,
I think certainly for the run in here, I think I just think it's impossible to drop him now. Obviously, if the form dries up or if he has a few tough games, you can look at it again. I don't think there'll be an expectation that just because you're always starting him that you can't drop him back out again. I think we're far away from that. Where maybe you would feel that with Rashford or Martial slightly more, but no, I think at the end of the day, goals win games, and I was slightly frustrated earlier in the season that I felt Dan James was getting 80% of the minutes when it should have been much closer to 50-50. And I think we might have, and I don't mean to say that Ole's managed him poorly. I think he's been managed extremely well, and you could only, it's all ifs and buts at the end of the day and hypotheticals. In hindsight, you could not be upset with his contribution this year. I just think he was probably ready even earlier than this.
I do think that earlier in the season there was a couple of times where Greenwood started games and didn't do that much.
Yeah,
he was coming in from the bench and making the difference.
Yeah,
and he seemed like, all right, this is the perfect role from him. And I think I'd even had a discussion with somebody, maybe it was like Dave G, where he was saying, look, surely it's time for Mason to be starting. And I said, well, I think he gives you that from the bench where he can make a difference in a game just with 15-20 minutes, and maybe like Ole knows exactly what that kind of player can give to the team that you keep him from there. But look, since the lockdown, he's come in and been hitting it straight from like minute one of the match, and now he's definitely locked in to be starting these matches.
100%. And just on him, he's truly looking like a generational talent at the moment. Like, even against Brighton, which obviously was a game that we haven't covered either, we're kind of covering both those games, but his goal in that game where he's coming in such speed with his step overs, to me there's such like an economy of movement with Greenwood. Nothing's like, he doesn't do anything for the sake of doing it, which is something you see often, particularly with Rashford. throwing in tricks, throwing in movements that just have no real purpose. Whereas Greenwood has this real clinical mindset about what he needs to do to get what he wants, and what he wants is a goal, and that's just so clear to me. So anything he does is to make space for himself. So it's the little shimmy, the double step over, and then he's only moving the ball, half a meter. Whereas a lot of players want to take a big touch then, and that's where it all runs away from them. It starts to look like Bambi on ice a wee bit, but he's just shifting it ever so slightly, because you just need to start moving the defender, and then he's looking for that kind of cross back to the near post shot or whatever else. And as you say, he can do it off both feet. He's so emphatic in his finishing, so good in his touches, and just everything's just so economical, but so quality. It's frightening, and it's not something that you think is going to go away, so that's why it's just so exciting for what he can become. But I don't think he needs to add a whole pile to his game. I think you just need to let him keep doing that. I mean, it's such a rare talent as a finisher, and as a final third player, to have that ability to create these little half chances and execute on them every time, that I think it's just something to absolutely nurture, and it's so encouraging and so exciting. I do think he'll be huge for us, an absolutely huge career for us.
Yeah, and it's also like the thing I've been impressed by, Ole had been talking up his finishing, even, pre-season, saying, the most natural finisher I've seen at the club. But he's on, I think, 6 assists already this season as well. And you talk about that Brighton game, it is his great cross that gives Bruno that lovely volley finish at the end.
Just stood up beautifully, and it's not even an easy ball. It's really not. It's weighted perfectly, and he just kind of punts it over. Very, very simple, and it just makes it easy for Bruno to kind of run onto it and absolutely wallop it.
Mason's a specialist finisher, specialist goal scorer. He does know exactly what to do with the ball wherever he is on the pitch. If he shoots, it's because he thinks he can score. If he finishes, it's because he knows he can. It's a better option than passing, and we'll always come back to his finishing, because the goals he scored were exceptional, and the timings of all of them were great for us. But his general overall play is improving. His fitness is improving. His understanding of his position is improving more and more. So, and I'm delighted with the goals he scores. And right foot, left foot doesn't matter. Now it's just about getting the headers in.
But yeah, look, going back to Bournemouth, there was a kind of shaky period after half-time that was all a bit bizarre. Like you say,
very bizarre.
Bailly comes in. And I would say that, looking on Twitter and whatever, there was still a lot of people clamouring for Bailly to be given a chance to be the first-choice centre-back. And he seems to have all the attributes, but as we saw quite quickly, he does also have this kind of brain fart in him every now and again. I mean, although I don't totally blame him actually for the penalty, but it was kind of before that. I think this Danjuma had also come on at half-time and started giving us a few problems and hit the post within like a couple of minutes, and we just did not look comfortable at all as soon as Bailly did not seem up to speed.
No.
And then it leads to this kind of bizarre penalty that I don't even know how it was given as a penalty. There was a lot of very questionable VAR calls today.
There was.
Where I think one of our goals was given like the free kick where Matic is definitely offside, whereas Rashford is then given offside and barely seems to be to me. So I don't know who. These decisions are all a bit weird, and I've given my views before on VAR that I'm not a fan of it. I don't see how it's really like helping, and I don't think that the kind of time it takes to stop all these is worth it at all. But it looks like it's here to stay. But that penalty, it looked like fun. One out the box and one on his shoulder, so I don't really know what on earth's going on there at all.
I think it's just, I really don't want to give too much time to VAR. I'd much rather discuss, Bailly and love and that kind of stuff. But just to say, they're relying on this clear and obvious rule when they don't even need that. They should just be able to directly overrule it. So because it's not clear and obvious due to the lack of clarity in their own imaging, that they can't overrule a decision which is, for me, clearly incorrect. So it's not necessarily VAR. It's the way it's been implemented. It's the rule structure around VAR and when it can be used and when it can't be used and when it should be overturned and when it should be overturned, that just leads to it being basically just it basically means we're not even using VAR. We're just saying whatever the referee decided, unless it's absolutely obviously wrong, is the decision. And to me it's useless. But Yeah, there was like 4 or 5 in that game that I was just like, if it had mattered, it would have been so frustrating. Luckily it was, they kind of started coming up when we were 2 goals up, and then, we put it to bed again after their penalty and all that kind of stuff. So
Well, there wasn't. They did score. They did, in theory, they scored after that penalty 3-3, but then it was given
yeah,
offside. So yeah, there was a period there where all of a sudden you thought, "Oh my God, are we going to throw this away?" But yeah, look. Anyway, let's get back to the more interesting question, which is kind of Bailly versus Lindelof. I mean, to be honest, for me, I don't think either of them
yeah,
are going to be the one, and that in the summer we
yeah.
should be strengthening. I mean, it has been a real shame that Tuanzebe, who I think is now written off for the season, he was actually the one
Mhm.
that I was really hoping to come on this season. And I thought that he could be like the long-term partner for Maguire, but his season's just been virtually a write-off.
Yeah, and we're hearing now he won't be available till September, so that's looking like he needs to have a very good preseason to have any shout, of kind of making that, because you don't want another year where he has to work his way in, and then stay fit, and then he takes it over. So obviously it depends how he's looking in training and stuff like that, but that is a sad one. But unfortunately, it's just gonna be parked until next year, and then we'll see what preseason has to say. It may be that we don't strengthen centre back in the summer. I think that would be a mistake. But if we don't, I think that would obviously bode well for him. But again, it's just these injury concerns that are the big thing. In respect of Bailly and Lindelof, I just think it's a bit of a race to the bottom. I thought it was interesting. Their whole, Wan-Bissaka was really gone forward. Shaw was really gone forward, which is absolutely what we had to do, and we were playing a very high line, which is totally fine with the style of play and the fact that we were playing Bournemouth and how the game was folding out. But that means that you are going to be vulnerable on the break, and Bournemouth were doing a very good job of just feeding that left channel and just absolutely picking on Lindelof. I counted 4, 5, 6 balls that just went over his shoulder. There was times where he was, in front of Joshua King, who was then catching up, passing him out, muscling him, and then holding the ball up and directing play when we have very few men back. And I did think it was a very tough first half on Lindelof. I thought he looked shaky. I thought he looked passive again. I thought they were just kind of bullying him slightly. And obviously I think he was a big part of the reason why we conceded. So it could be that he was hooked just because that was a vulnerability that they were exposing. It looked like they would get more joy down the left-hand side. Then Bailly comes on, and it's just like, just an absolutely mental 5 minutes of just, you couldn't even call it football. I mean, it was a joke. And I don't think he was the only one to blame. I thought Maguire and De Gea and everyone was involved with that passage of play of just not wanting to clear their lines. And again, I think it was just us lulled into this, Bournemouth have been awful, we're class, we can do whatever we want. And I think there was a bit of a lack of respect there in short periods in that game. But I mean, it was just a mad 5 minutes of absolute disaster football at the back. But after that, and again, I know we kind of put the game to bed after that. After that, I thought Bailly was okay. I thought he had a good 40 minutes after that. I thought he looked in control. Was that threat down the left hand side and behind pretty much stopped. After that, 5 disaster minutes, and he was able to marshal that. I felt much better and had the physicality and the kind of pace, I think, to kind of shut that down. So I did think what Ole wanted from the halftime sub, we got eventually. It was just that sort of first 10 minutes where they scored, as you say, actually 2 goals, but one was given offside, kind of marred that form, which I think is a bit of a shame for Bailly, because actually I thought after that he was okay. But as you say, I don't think either, barring some turn up in form, I don't think either of them are really going to be the guy next year. It's a bit sad.
But
really.
right now, who would you go with? I mean, I actually would be tempted to give Bailly a run in the team.
I'd give him a start against Villa here. Yeah, I'd give Bailly the
That's
start
it.
against Villa.
When you're giving somebody bit parts here, there, then it's difficult to really assess them. Whereas Lindelof, we've seen him. He's been the solid choice.
Yeah.
We know what he can do. We know what he can't do. And he's a good player. He's like a solid kind of 6 out of 7, but he doesn't hit 8 9s. He doesn't make
No, he hasn't
those
kicked on.
outstanding. And yeah, he's good on the ball as well. And a couple of times today he can go forward if need be. But I would be tempted to give Bailly a bit of a run, and let's just see what he can do.
Yeah.
If he's got 3 or 4 games in a row.
The big issue I have with Lindelof, and I've always been a big fan. I really like him. I like his character. I just like the way he plays football as well. And it just disappoints me that he hasn't stepped into the role more, because I just think it's a confidence and I just think it's a mentality thing, to be honest. I think he's too passive, and he just needs to just be more aggressive and be more confident in his own ability. And I think that's the big issue. Against Brighton, he actually brought the ball out very well. And I think it was the first goal that if Lindelof doesn't make his run right up into the right wing channel, the space isn't probably open there for Mason to pick up that ball and drive into the drive into the box and do a step over to get his goal. So he had a good game, a very good game, a very confident game against Brighton. But this is what we've seen with Lindelof. We've seen everything we want to see in little patches, and then he just kind of regresses and just looks so easily bullied, in the Premier League. And for me, it's just such a shame. But as you say, I think he's had a very fair crack at it, and now to me, he just looks like a very, very, very good backup, which is it's no great shame. It's no great criticism. It's not what he would want, obviously, but I think for us and our aspirations, I think that's what he'll be.
Yeah, fair enough. Look, let's see now. I think maybe even Ole has been thinking about that, because we'll find out if there was an injury. But yeah, maybe he himself is thinking between these two, who is like the best one to be going as the long-term option. I mean, as I said, there was 2 matches this week. There's so much happened in this game with like 5 goals, VAR. It could have been about 8-3 or something like that. But yeah, we should quickly touch on that 3-0, which was also another really good, solid win against a team who are actually in better form than Bournemouth have been. I mean, Bournemouth are actually like the worst kind of form team along with Norwich. So really, there was no excuses today. But yeah, going away to Brighton, who'd had a couple of good results, and we made relatively easy work of them as well, right? I mean, we've already talked about Greenwood, Fernandes getting his couple of goals, but yeah, was there any other talking points you remember from that one?
Not particularly. Just the absolute assurance with which we dispatched Brighton, I thought was kind of the best thing for me. I mean, it just never looked in doubt. It looked so in control from the get go, and it was a very consistent performance. I felt, even when we kind of took the pace out of it, basically in the second half, we didn't need to press on, but we were still just so much in control and just looked so far the better team, obviously, as we are. But as you say, Brighton, beat Arsenal. I don't think that lost since Project Restart. So and we just made it look so comfortable. Like there was a big gulf in class. Again, Pogba with a very understated but fantastic performance. Again, the same today. He's not going to grab the headlines because he's not getting the goals and he's not being asked to do everything. But his performance against Brighton, his performance against Bournemouth is as close to a perfect, complete midfield performance you're ever likely to see. So good on both sides of the ball, and just just looking so good with other quality players to play with. But no, I can't really say much more about the Brighton performance. Bruno stole the show again, I think, a little bit. The breakaway goal, I mean, was just fantastic. I think 5 touches from Maguire's header to Matic's over the shoulder, kind of high foot over the ball volleyed pass, which was fantastic. Mason getting down, absolute lung busted and run from Rashford, which does play a big part. Martial getting his run up the pitch as well to take defenders away, and then Bruno sneaking in at the back post. Why do we never sub Bruno? By the way, he didn't get subbed up against Brighton. I don't think he didn't get subbed.
I was surprised when I saw Regalo and Mata warming up. I just assumed
Mata was for Bruno. Yeah,
exactly. But
I'm kind of glad. It was kind of nice that he didn't come off, because them two actually paired up really well in the latter stages of the game, and I felt a bit bad because it got the kind of testimonial Harlem Globetrotters kind of vibe at that point. But I feel like obviously he has immense fitness and can run all day, but I just feel like he probably didn't need to play another 90 minutes.
No, yeah, I was surprised as well, and do think that we had this question mark on Ole before on overplaying certain players. Earlier in the season, it was Maguire and Rashford who then ended up getting injured as a direct result of that. So yeah, I do think when you're like 4-5 up, then yeah, maybe it's time to give somebody a rest.
Ole just likes watching him.
Yeah, look, he's trying to give him the chance to obviously settle in. He's new in the team. He feels like he's just slotted straight in as if he's been playing with all these players forever.
If Maguire was unfit, I'd give him the captain's armband.
I've seen somebody else talking about that as well, and I do think it's still a bit early.
Only because it's maybe a bit of a slight against Pogba or Rashford. I wouldn't even include De Gea in the conversation, which just not in a million years. But he is the leader on the pitch, and also, that first goal that we scored today with Greenwood, Bruno's basically fallen over and slide tackles a perfect pass over to him. And if that pass isn't really zipped across, Greenwood's little movement, Greenwood kind of steps in towards Bruno and then dials back out so that they kind of sell a dummy to the defender. And if Bruno doesn't zip that across, he can't do that one touch and strike finish. And it's just, you just need him to get a moment in a game. And that's why, as we spoke about earlier, you just have so much confidence that we will, come back if we go 1 down or whatever else, or create the chances when teams are really sitting in, because you just need to get him in those little half spaces. And, Bournemouth just couldn't, they didn't know where he was at any point during the game. They were just on a swivel looking for him because he's so dynamic. But again, everything is just done with such quality, and even when he misses something, it's because he's trying an incisive pass, and it's frightening, absolutely frightening. I feel like it will dry up at some stage, but it's so hard to imagine at the moment.
No, totally. And look, that win takes us into fourth place. I mean, yeah, other teams have game in hand, Chelsea, but I can't remember. It was like maybe around Christmas or January. You were saying that almost you thought the season was a write-off, and I don't remember like that. I think it was Dave G said maybe just before lockdown that I don't see why third place isn't on. I don't see Leicester keeping this run up at all. And yeah, all of a sudden, third place is definitely in touch. Although, yeah, Leicester have won today. But yeah, last week, Leicester lost. David Moyes, the good old chosen one, finally did us a favour and pulled out a last minute win against Chelsea. Chelsea, we're recording this, like I say, right after the United game. And in fact, I'm just looking and seeing that actually Wolves are losing 1-0 to Arsenal at half time at the moment, which is another good result for us. And yeah, Chelsea will play later on today. So yeah, look, third place is definitely attainable, and like I'm pretty sure, Colm, that I can't remember when it was, November. You thought that we had absolutely zero chance of getting anywhere near the Champions League places, right?
Through top four, yeah. I always felt we could. We'd shown so well throughout the year that we could play against the big teams that I always thought Europa was on the cards, but it's such a lottery that it's not. The fact that Mourinho was able to kind of hedge his bets on the Europa League and actually deliver it is actually testament to his ability as a manager, even though he's looking like a dinosaur with every passing day. But it's not something you could ever, I think, bank on. So no, I would never have had us in with even a shout. As much as I desperately wanted us to get Bruno in the summer, I would never have thought he'd be this transformative for our team. And I also think that lockdown, although we were in an extremely rich vein of form, so in the one sense lockdown disrupted us, now seeing Pogba back and having Rashford back and those 3 months allowed us to have that. I think there was always we were concerned that with the Spurs game, the Sheffield United game, the first two games post lockdown, that that might have come at a bad time for us with regards to the fact that we were in such a good run before. But I think now it's clear to see that actually it was icing on the cake in terms of getting those two players back. So whilst I am absolutely delighted, buzzing with Ole, I do think he's been slightly fortuitous in that sense this season, that some things just timing wise have gone very, very well for him. But that's, no one can control that. That's just the way it is, and you have to respond to it. So there's no point in trying to detract credit on that basis.
Yeah, you can say timing-wise things have gone well for him, but as well, don't forget that Pogba had been missing for most of the season. Martial had a month out. Rashford had.
It's so easy. It's so easy now to, particularly because it now feels like a new season. As Alex said, I think last week, it's very hard to actually remember what was happening at various points during the season because of the big break and everything. It almost seems and I kept saying last season earlier when actually I probably meant this season kind of thing. So it's quite difficult to kind of piece them together now with that big 3 month break in the middle. But it's so easy now to gloss over past sins, and that's totally fair because history is written by the winner basically, and there's no one who can now say that Ole doesn't deserve immense credit for what he's done here. All the plaudits of kind of sticking with it and seeing his vision through and all the good things. If we don't get fourth from this position, you can only take it game by game and assess it at the end of the year. But we're in an immense position. The football is outstanding. Ole, Lord and Saviour, no issues whatsoever.
Good. I mean, look, and I'll be honest as well. Like, I thought that we were in with a chance with top four, but it was going to be a real struggle and was going to need Chelsea to drop. And I thought Leicester were out of touch, to be honest.
The other thing I would say about that top four thing is, and again, maybe a slightly fortuitous circumstance for Ole, although he's as much part of it as everyone else. But this is an awful year in terms of quality beneath those top two. Like no one really deserves it. Chelsea have kind of been thereabouts, but again, they're in a transition year and have had lots of dodgy results, lots of losses. We were still, prior to this kind of good run, I don't know where exactly it's sitting now, on course for our worst ever points total. So to get fourth at the end of a year like that, where Leicester have looked so good for half the season and then so utterly abysmal for the second half, it's just been a bit of a mad year for lots of clubs, really.
Yeah, and I think I saw something like that the last day of this season. I know for sure is us versus Leicester.
Yeah.
I think it's Chelsea Wolves.
Yeah,
it is, isn't it? So yeah, that last day of this season could really make such a huge difference. But yeah, that is the crazy thing about the Premier League, that there's 6 teams, and then we're not even including Tottenham or Arsenal.
No, and really, we're probably not giving enough credence to Wolves.
Yeah,
who
Wolves
have been genuinely
Wolves
consistently brilliant.
I mean, like I say, they're losing right now, but that there's still half to play in that match.
By the way, I think Saka scored, and he's in my fantasy football team.
Well, he sat on my bench actually. That's going to annoy me as well. It's not going right for me at all. But yeah, anyway, you can only be happy when United are rolling on. But yeah, look, as I said, I would not have put money on United finishing top four. I thought we had a good chance of it, and I definitely thought we could cement that fifth. And we still got City's kind of Champions League appeal to come, and yeah, fifth place may well be enough anyway. But yeah, I've been amazed, and how we're straight up in there. I mean, we might not finish the day in top four. It depends what Chelsea and Watford do. But we're smashing that running now, and still what is there left now? 6 games, something like
No,
that.
less. That's 5 now, I think.
Five. Yeah. So that's it. Look, let's see where we go. And we remember we have had this kind of run under Ole before when he first turned up, even though we then had a horrible run after that towards the end of last season. But yeah, he has been behind these kind of runs before. So yeah, now you'd start talking about why not third place, which is a great thing to see.
And even even listen to pundits, across obviously various media outlets. Everyone's talking about Manchester United next year. Like the conversation on everyone's lips is a title challenge. Are we mad to say that?
Well, we'd had this conversation, haven't we? In our kind of we have a group, WhatsApp group of whoever comes on the podcast, and I think Ed and Dave were feeling very bullish and ready to put money down on us making being top
Title
two
challenge,
within
10
they were even
points within
talking
the
about
winner, something like that.
within 5 or 7 points of winning the league next year or something like that.
It's genuinely it's silly season at this stage. Like people are getting, but you can't even say people are getting carried away. It's not as if it isn't evidence based. You can only look at that run of form, goals scored, goals conceded. The form of individual players, goal scoring wise, and the fact that I think there is a belief that we'll make additions this summer. So it would be so crushing for it all to go wrong now, because it just seems poised there for United to usher in a new era of dominance, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, so I mean, next up we've got Villa, who have not been in particularly good form, and again, surely there's schemes like no excuses not to win that game again. I mean, they are fighting for their lives,
Yeah.
so it's not going to be easy. The interesting one in that game is always going to be, I'm sure that they're going to build up a lot of stuff on Jack Grealish, who's still constantly linked to us. Although for me, I kind of was quite interested in bringing him in. But if Pogba's staying, then I don't really see how we have that much need for Grealish, to be honest. I think when a lot of this talk was before, when people assumed that Pogba was not going to be with us next season, and that's another thing. I always like to go back to these things we've talked about before. And I remember having a podcast with you and Reese earlier in the season when I said, look, I don't think it's out of question that Pogba is with us next season, whereas I think both of you two were pretty dead set that there was no chance he was going to be staying with us.
I apologise for not predicting a global pandemic and ensuing recession, which I'm still...
I don't think it's all down to that.
Well, I think it's in a big part because I think it's going to impact so many teams' finances. But also, even before that, my kind of position was, and it still is, and I'm not convinced that this won't be the case in the summer, although I think it probably is likely he does sign a new contract now, but it's that golden cage thing, who can afford him, who can pay for him, who actually has the gap in their team for him, although his performances at the moment will bring suitors, but it would have to be PSG or Real. I mean, Juventus have made their moves, I think, a little bit, so it's hard to see them. Barcelona are skint, and I don't think they would be too interested in them anyway. So, Paul's just in that situation where I think he would realise this, that it's very hard to see who could buy him, and why would you leave? Why would you leave?
That's the thing now. Why would you leave? And I've always thought he was pretty happy. And I've always thought he was a player that came back to United because he felt he had unfinished business. And if he left again, he'd still have that unfinished business. But of course, under Mourinho, he was not happy at the club. That was obvious to see.
But that's why there would have been no blame attached to him leaving. I would just rather, do it. Don't just endlessly talk about it. And that to me, that's that detracts from the whole goal.
It is actually an interesting thing that when Pogba was out, every week there was press about him. Is he injured? Is he feigning injury? And I've always said that, as far as I was concerned, it was all complete nonsense. But we all know that he has thought about leaving the club for sure, at the very least. But now that he's actually come back in the team, he's barely getting any press. Nobody's talking about. We've not talked about Pogba's performances at all, even though he's done a solid job. And in the past we always had this big question mark: is he number 8? Is he number 10? Where should he be playing? And now he's slotted in. He's doing well. I sometimes almost feel like though we're missing a little bit from him, but at the same time it's kind of good that he doesn't feel that he has to do everything. He doesn't feel like it's all on me, I've got to do it all. That he can just focus on what he needs to do for the team rather than feeling like I've got to create every bloody thing.
No, I think he's just been quietly outstanding. And I really do think he's been outstanding. And I said on both sides of the ball, he can be so physical and such a presence in midfield as well, in terms of how he uses his body and his touches around that, and he just dances around players. There was a period earlier where he just kind of dragged it back from Brooks and then sort of popped it out to the side, and it's just outstanding at the moment the way he's playing. But it's so pleasing that it's so quiet. It's like the landscape now is so different than 6 months ago, than a year ago. So the way he felt then is not the way he feels now, and we can only kind of evaluate that on an ongoing basis.
Well, that is exactly why, I'd said to me that it wasn't a done deal that he was leaving at all. Whereas, people, I think there was even a friend of mine who had a bet with me saying Pogba's never going to play for this club again. And then that was in around like December time. And I said, I'm happy to take that bet, because as far as I'm concerned, it's all absolute newspaper nonsense that he has been injured and he will definitely come back before the end of the season. So yeah, look, let's see. I still think that he can be a really important player for us, and that, it's written that Paul Pogba needs to win some big trophies with Manchester United.
Nothing will make me happier. I'll submit on that one.
Good. I think that's probably about as good a place to wrap up this week as any. As I say, the games come thick and fast now. So yeah, we're trying to churn out these podcasts as much as we can. We're aiming for a weekly at least till the end of the season. I know we've not been so great in the past, but yeah, we've got a good kind of bunch now, and we'll try and get them out as we can. Please do, as I say, follow us on Twitter and let us know if there's any things you want us to be discussing, any questions over there. YouTube, Facebook, we're always really poor at keeping these things updated, but we are out there and appreciate any follows and reviews and all we can get over there. Like I say, Villa up in just a few days' time, and let's see if we can keep rolling on and still be going on the positive on the next show, right?
Yep.
All right, I think that's good night from us, and we'll see you on the next one.
Cheerio.